The morning started like any other across Earth. People were drinking coffee, children were going to school, and office workers were checking their emails. Nobody expected that this Tuesday would become the day that changed everything. At exactly 10:47 a.m. Eastern Time, every screen on Earth went black. Televisions, computer monitors, phones, digital billboards, and even the tiny displays on microwaves all showed the same thing. A symbol appeared that nobody had seen before. It looked like a twisted metal claw holding a star. Sarah Martinez was making breakfast for her daughter Emma when their kitchen TV flickered and died. She thought it was broken until she heard her neighbor screaming outside. Sarah looked out the window and saw Mrs. Chen pointing at her phone with terror in her eyes. The symbol disappeared after 10 seconds. What came next was much worse. A face appeared on every screen. It was not human. The creature had silver skin that looked like metal, with 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. Its mouth was too wide, filled with teeth that seemed to be made of crystal. When it spoke, the voice came from everywhere at once. "Primitive beings of the third planet," the alien said. Its voice was cold and empty. "We are the Veltar Dominion. We rule this galaxy. You are nothing but insects to us." Sarah grabbed Emma and pulled her close. Around the world, billions of people watched in horror as the creature continued speaking. "Your species has spread to other worlds without our permission. This cannot be allowed. We have taken 10 million of your kind from the planet you call New Geneva. They will serve as an example." The alien's face disappeared. What replaced it made Sarah's blood freeze. The screen showed a huge stadium filled with humans. Men, women, children, and elderly people were all crowded together in the center. They looked scared and confused. Many were crying. Some were holding each other. Sarah recognized the place immediately. New Geneva was humanity's newest colony world. Her brother Mike lived there with his family. She searched the crowd desperately for his face. Around the stadium sat thousands of aliens. They looked different from the one who had spoken. Some were tall and thin like walking sticks. Others were short and fat with too many arms. Many had features that hurt to look at. They were all watching the humans and making sounds that might have been laughter. "Let the cleansing begin," announced the voice. What happened next would be burned into the memory of every human alive. The aliens began killing the colonists slowly and carefully. They used weapons that caused incredible pain, but took a long time to kill. They made it last as long as possible. The worst part was that they were enjoying it. The alien audience cheered and clapped as humans died in agony. They placed bets on how long each person would survive. Children were saved for last, forced to watch their parents die first. Sarah covered Emma's eyes, but she could not look away herself. She had to know if Mike was there. She had to witness what was happening to her species. The broadcast continued for 6 hours. 6 hours of systematic torture and murder, broadcast to every human on Earth and in the colonies. The aliens made sure to show close-ups of faces. They wanted everyone to see the pain and fear in human eyes as life left them. During the 3rd hour, Sarah saw him. Mike was holding his 5-year-old son, Tommy, while his wife, Lisa, tried to shield their baby daughter. Sarah screamed and fell to her knees as she watched her brother's family become part of the nightmare. The aliens saved Mike's family for near the end. They made sure the camera got a good view as they killed Tommy first, then Lisa and the baby, leaving Mike for last. The look in her brother's eyes as he died would haunt Sarah forever. When it was over, 10 million humans were dead. The stadium floor was covered in blood. The alien audience was cheering and celebrating like they had just watched the greatest show ever created. The original alien appeared on screen again. Its 4 eyes seemed to look directly at every person watching. "This is what happens to insects who forget their place," it said. "Your governments have 72 hours to surrender completely to the Veltar Dominion. If you refuse, every human world will suffer the same fate. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. You will submit or you will all die." The screens went black again. For several seconds, there was complete silence across the entire planet. Then the screaming started. People poured into the streets. Some were crying, some were vomiting, and others were shouting in rage. Cars crashed as drivers lost control. Emergency services were overwhelmed with calls. The stock market collapsed within minutes. But something else was happening too. Something the aliens had not expected. In military bases around the world, alarms were sounding. Not panic alarms, but the specific tones that meant only one thing. War had come to humanity, and humanity was going to answer. General Patricia Hayes was in the Pentagon when the broadcast ended. She had watched the entire thing without showing any emotion on her face. When it was over, she picked up a red phone that connected directly to the president. "Sir," she said in a voice like ice, "I recommend we activate Protocol 7. Protocol 7 was something most people had never heard of. It was humanity's deepest, darkest secret. The plan for what to do if the species ever faced complete extinction." "Are you certain, General?" asked the president. Hayes looked at the black screen where 10 million humans had just been murdered for entertainment. She thought about her own grandchildren and what the aliens would do to them. "Yes, sir. It's time to show them what humans really are." Around the world, similar conversations were happening. In Russia, China, Britain, and every other nation, leaders were coming to the same conclusion. The aliens had made one critical mistake. They had united humanity. For the first time in human history, every nation, every government, and every military force had the same goal. The same enemy, the same burning desire for revenge. In hidden bunkers beneath mountains, weapons that violated every treaty ever signed were being prepared. Scientists who had spent decades working on projects too terrible to discuss were getting phone calls. Soldiers who had trained for wars that everyone hoped would never come were getting their orders. The aliens had given humanity 72 hours to surrender. Humanity was going to use those 72 hours to prepare for the most complete and total war in the history of the galaxy. They had awakened something that had been sleeping since humanity first learned to make fire and sharpen sticks, something that had helped them survive ice ages, plagues, and natural disasters, something that had made them the only species on their planet to reach the stars. The aliens had wanted to show the galaxy what happened to humans who stepped out of line. They were about to learn what humans did to anyone who hurt their families. The 72 hours had begun. The first thing the aliens noticed was the silence. In their long history of conquering species, the Veltar had seen every possible reaction. Some civilizations begged for mercy. Others tried to negotiate. A few fought back with desperate, useless attacks that only made their destruction more entertaining. None had ever responded with complete silence. High Commander Zektar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue planet through the viewing screen. His 4 eyes were focused on the data streams coming from Earth's surface. "Status report," he commanded. "Their communication networks are still active," reported his subordinate, "but there are no distress signals. No attempts to contact us. No surrender messages." Zektar's mouth twisted into what might have been a smile. "Perhaps they are too frightened to respond. Fear makes some species freeze like prey animals." What Zektar could not see were the conversations happening in every major city on Earth. In Washington, D.C., President Elizabeth Warren sat in the Situation Room with her entire cabinet. The room was silent except for the humming of computers and the quiet breathing of the most powerful people on the planet. "Options," she said simply. Secretary of Defense. James Rodriguez opened a black folder that had never been opened before. "Madam President, we have exactly 17 options under Protocol 7. All of them lead to the same place, which is total warfare, not the kind we've practiced on each other. The kind we've theorized about for species survival." The president looked around the table. Every face was grim but determined. "How long do we need?" 60 hours for basic preparation. "But Madam President, once we start this, there's no going back. Protocol 7 isn't about winning a war. It's about making sure our enemies cease to exist." Similar conversations were happening in Moscow, where President Volkov was reviewing files marked with symbols that translated to planet killer. In Beijing, Premier Li was authorizing the use of weapons that had been hidden in deep space for decades. In London, Prime Minister Thompson was activating sleeper agents who had been waiting their entire lives for a call that everyone hoped would never come, but the most important conversation was happening in a place that did not officially exist. 3 miles beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Patricia Hayes walked through corridors that led to humanity's deepest secrets. Her footsteps echoed off walls that were built to survive nuclear war, alien invasion, and the end of the world. She stopped at a door marked only with the number 7. Inside, 12 people were waiting for her. They represented every major military force on Earth, but more importantly, they represented projects that existed in the shadows. "Gentlemen, ladies," Hayes said as she sat down, "today we stop pretending to be a peaceful species." Dr. Sarah Chen, who looked nothing like her grandmother who had watched the broadcast that morning, opened her laptop. Project Prometheus is ready for deployment. We have 37 ships equipped with reality displacement drives. They can travel anywhere in the galaxy in less than 6 hours. Colonel Martinez, Sarah's cousin from the morning's tragedy, spoke next. Project Reaper has been waiting for authorization for 12 years. Our AI combat systems are approximately 400 years ahead of what the public thinks we have. Admiral Jackson, whose son had died on New Geneva, was next. Project Darkstar has been building weapons in the asteroid belt for 20 years. We have enough firepower to sterilize every planet in their empire. One by one, they revealed humanity's true capabilities. Weapons that bent space and time. Artificial intelligences that could outthink any biological mind. Ships that could move through dimensions the aliens had never heard of. The truth was that humanity had been preparing for this day since they first looked at the stars. Not because they were aggressive, but because they understood something fundamental about the universe. Everything that could go wrong eventually would. How long until we can strike? Hayes asked. We can have the first wave in their space in 48 hours, Dr. Chen replied. Full deployment in 72 hours. Perfect. That gives them just enough time to think they've won. While the military prepared, something else was happening across Earth. Something that would have terrified the aliens even more if they had understood it. Humanity was becoming unified in a way they had never been before. In New York, Rabbi Goldman was praying with Imam Hassan and Father O'Brien. 3 religions that had fought for centuries were asking the same God for strength to protect their people. In Tokyo, Dr. Tanaka was sharing research with Dr. Petrov in Moscow and Dr. Williams in London. Scientists who had competed for decades were now working together to solve a single problem: how to kill aliens more efficiently. In São Paulo, Maria Santos was organizing her neighbors to help families who had lost people on New Geneva. Across the world, humans were taking care of each other in ways they never had before. The aliens had wanted to terrify humanity into submission. Instead, they had removed the only thing that had ever held humanity back: the habit of fighting each other instead of outside threats. On the second day, Zektar was beginning to feel concerned. Still no response from the planet? He asked. None, High Commander. But we are detecting unusual energy readings. What kind of energy? The subordinate hesitated. Unknown, sir. Our sensors cannot identify the source. What their sensors could not detect were the reality drives powering up in hidden bases around Earth. Weapons that worked by changing the laws of physics in small areas. Ships that moved by folding space like paper. By the third day, Zektar was worried enough to contact the Dominion Council. The humans are not responding as expected, he reported. They should have surrendered by now. Overlord Vexhai, the supreme leader of the Veltar, appeared on the communication screen. Perhaps they need another demonstration. Select one of their colony worlds and repeat the cleansing. Which world, Overlord? It does not matter. They are all insects. Choose whichever is most convenient. That was the moment when humanity's listening posts, hidden throughout the galaxy, intercepted the message. Within minutes, the location of every major Veltar world was being uploaded to human military networks. The aliens had just told humanity exactly where to find them. In the final hours before the deadline, the world's leaders gathered for one last meeting. It was not held in any government building. Instead, they met in a simple room beneath Geneva, where humanity had once tried to create peace. Any last objections? President Warren asked. Every leader looked around the table. These were people who had spent their careers disagreeing with each other about everything. Now they all had the same expression on their faces. No, said Premier Lee. They made their choice when they murdered our people for entertainment. Protocol 7 is authorized, said President Volkov. May whatever gods are watching forgive us for what we're about to do. President Warren looked at her watch. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 6 hours left. In 6 hours, we either surrender our species to slavery and death, or we show the galaxy what humans are really capable of. She stood up and looked each leader in the eye. I vote for option 2. Every hand in the room went up. Around the world, final preparations were being made. Soldiers were saying goodbye to families. Scientists were running last-minute checks on weapons that had never been tested in combat. Pilots were climbing into ships that could travel between stars. But most importantly, every human alive was sharing the same feeling. For the first time in their species' history, they all wanted exactly the same thing. They wanted the beings who had murdered their families to stop existing. High Commander Zektar had no idea that in a few hours, he would become the first member of his species to learn what total war actually meant. The countdown had reached 0. It was time for the aliens to meet the real humanity. The deadline passed at exactly 10:47 a.m. Eastern Time, 72 hours after the broadcast. High Commander Zektar waited on his flagship, expecting to receive Earth's surrender. Instead, he received something else entirely. His communications. Officer looked up from her station with confusion in all 4 eyes. High Commander, we are receiving a transmission from the human planet. Finally. Put it through. The main screen activated, showing a single human female in what appeared to be a military uniform. She had gray hair and cold blue eyes that seemed to look directly at Zektar. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Force, she said. Her voice was calm and steady. Your deadline has expired. Zektar leaned forward. You have decided to surrender, then? No, Admiral Chen replied. We have decided to give you a deadline of our own. The alien commander felt a flicker of amusement. These primitive creatures still thought they could negotiate. You have 1 hour to withdraw all Veltar forces from human space and return to your home systems, Chen continued. If you do not comply, we will be forced to take action. Zektar's amusement turned to laughter. You dare threaten the Veltar Dominion? We have been conquering galaxies since before your species learned to make fire. Admiral Chen's expression did not change. You have 59 minutes. The transmission ended. Zektar turned to his tactical officer. How many ships do the humans have in this system? Our sensors detect no human vessels, High Commander. Their largest ships are primitive chemical rockets that cannot even reach the edge of their solar system. Then what was that display supposed to accomplish? He was about to find out. 58 minutes later, space began to ripple near Zektar's flagship. The distortion started small, like heat waves rising from hot ground. Then it grew larger. High Commander, the sensor officer called out. I'm detecting massive gravitational anomalies throughout the fleet formation. Explain. I cannot. The readings make no sense. It's as if space itself is being torn apart. The ripples became tears. Reality split open like fabric, and through the gaps came ships unlike anything the Veltar had ever seen. They were black as the space between stars, with angles that seemed to hurt the eyes to look at. They moved without engines, sliding through space like sharks through water. There were hundreds of them appearing all around the Veltar fleet. Impossible, Zektar whispered. How did they get past our sensors? Admiral Chen's face appeared on his screen again. You had your hour. Now you get to see what humans do to child killers. The human ships opened fire, but these were not the primitive weapons the Veltar expected. These were reality displacement cannons that changed the laws of physics around their targets. Veltar ships simply stopped existing as the universe forgot they had ever been there. Quantum torpedo launchers fired projectiles that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. They passed through shields like they were not there and struck the core of enemy ships with the force of collapsing stars. Gravity hammers created black holes the size of pinheads that lasted for exactly 3 seconds, long enough to tear Veltar vessels apart from the inside, but short enough to keep from damaging space itself. Return fire, Zektar screamed. His weapons officer tried to target the human ships, but the targeting computer could not lock on. The human vessels existed in normal space but also existed somewhere else at the same time. Veltar weapons passed through them like they were ghosts. High Commander, his communications officer reported. We're receiving distress calls from fleets throughout the sector. Every Veltar military installation is under attack. How many human ships are there? Unknown, sir. They appear to be everywhere at once. The truth was even more terrifying than the Veltar realized. Humanity had not sent thousands of ships. They had sent exactly 37 vessels equipped with reality displacement drives. These ships could exist in multiple locations simultaneously, attacking dozens of targets while being in only one place. But the real surprise was not the technology. It was the strategy. Admiral Chen was not trying to win a battle. She was trying to send a message. Every Veltar ship in human space was destroyed in exactly 17 minutes. Not because that was how long it took, but because 17 was the number of human children who had died first in the broadcast. The timing was precise and deliberate. When the last Veltar vessel exploded, Admiral Chen opened communications to every remaining alien ship in the galaxy. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Force. You have just witnessed the destruction of the Veltar Third Fleet. They were eliminated not because they were dangerous to us, but because they participated in the murder of human civilians. She paused, letting that sink in throughout alien space. Let me be very clear about what happens next. Every Veltar military asset will be destroyed. Every Veltar colony will be evacuated. Every Veltar world will be rendered uninhabitable. This is not negotiable. This is not a threat. This is a promise. On the Veltar homeworld of Kethvar, Overlord Vexhai received reports of the attacks with growing disbelief. All our ships in human space are gone? Yes, Overlord. Destroyed without managing to damage a single human vessel. How is this possible? Their technology was primitive just 3 days ago. What Vexhai did not understand was that human technology had never been primitive. Humanity had simply been pretending to be less advanced than they were. For decades, they had hidden their true capabilities while they watched and learned about other species. The reality displacement drives had been tested for 20 years. The quantum weapons had been refined for a decade. The dimensional ships had been built in secret factories in the asteroid belt. Humanity had been preparing for war since the day they reached the stars. Not because they wanted to fight, but because they knew that someday something would force them to. Send a message to the humans, Vexhai ordered. Tell them we are willing to negotiate. The response came back in less than an hour. The time for negotiation ended when you murdered 10 million humans for entertainment. You will evacuate all Veltar colonies within 72 hours. Any military vessel that remains in space after that deadline will be destroyed. Any colony ship that does not comply will be destroyed. Any world that refuses to surrender will be sterilized. Admiral Chen's face appeared on every communication device in Veltar space. We are not interested in ruling you or enslaving you. We are not interested in your resources or your territory. We want only one thing, for your species to cease being a threat to any other species in this galaxy. She leaned forward, and her blue eyes seemed to burn with cold fire. You showed us what you do to innocent people. Now we are going to show you what we do to murderers. The message ended, but the attacks continued. Human ships appeared in every Veltar system simultaneously. They did not target civilians or colonies. They targeted only military installations, government buildings, and weapons factories. But they did it with a precision that terrified every alien species in the galaxy. Veltar command centers were destroyed by quantum torpedoes that materialized inside the buildings. Defense platforms were eliminated by reality bombs that simply made them stop existing. Weapons depots were consumed by controlled black holes that left perfect spheres of empty space. Within hours, the Veltar Dominion had lost its entire military capability. But Admiral Chen was not done. Human ships began appearing near every world that had allied with the Veltar. They did not attack. They simply waited in orbit, broadcasting a single message. This world has provided support to the Veltar Dominion. You have 24 hours to renounce your alliance and provide evidence of your withdrawal from all Veltar territories. Failure to comply will result in the sterilization of your planet. Across the galaxy, alien civilizations that had considered themselves powerful suddenly found themselves faced with an impossible choice: submit to human demands or face total destruction. Most chose to submit. The few who chose to fight learned why that was a mistake. The Korthak Empire had ruled 40 systems for 1,000 years. Their leader, Emperor Grauthok, decided to make a stand against the humans. We will not bow to these primitive mammals, he declared. Send our entire fleet to destroy their homeworld. The Korthak fleet was the largest in the galaxy. 5,000 ships armed with weapons that could crack planets. They gathered in formation and prepared to jump to Earth. They never made it. Human ships appeared around the entire Korthak fleet and opened fire with weapons the aliens had never seen before. Temporal distortion cannons that aged enemy ships 1,000,000 years in seconds, turning them to dust. Dimension cutters that sliced vessels out of reality itself. In 30 minutes, 5,000 ships became empty space and scattered atoms. Emperor Gralthok surrendered immediately. Admiral Chen's final message of the day was broadcast to every inhabited world in the galaxy. Today you have seen what humanity is capable of when we are united in purpose. We did not seek this war. We did not want to become the thing we have become. But you forced our hand when you murdered our families for entertainment. She stood in front of a hologram showing the current state of Veltar space. Where once there had been a mighty empire, now there were only empty systems and refugee ships fleeing toward the galactic rim. Let this be a lesson to every species in this galaxy. Humans are peaceful by choice, not by nature. We prefer to build rather than destroy, to create rather than conquer, to protect rather than attack. 1 week after the first strikes, Overlord Vexhai sat in his command chamber watching the report stream in. Each one was worse than the last. The colonies in Sector 7 have been evacuated, Overlord, his aide reported. The humans destroyed our military installations but allowed the civilian transports to leave safely. What about Sector 12? The same, Overlord. They eliminate our defenses, then give the colonists exactly 6 hours to evacuate before they sterilize the planets. Vexhai had ruled the Veltar Dominion for 3 centuries. He had conquered 100 species and enslaved 1,000 worlds. But he had never faced an enemy like this. The humans were not interested in conquest. They were not taking prisoners or claiming territory. They were doing something far more terrifying. They were erasing the Veltar from existence. Perhaps we can negotiate with them, suggested his military advisor. Offer them tribute, technology, territory. We tried that, Vexhai replied. They returned our ambassador as space dust with a message saying that murderers do not get to negotiate. What the Veltar did not understand was that they were not fighting a war. They were experiencing something humanity called Protocol Carthage. The name came from an ancient Earth civilization that had been completely destroyed by its enemies. Not just defeated, but erased so thoroughly that even the ruins were covered with salt so nothing could ever grow there again. Humanity had refined this concept for galactic warfare. Admiral Chen stood in the command center of the ship, righteous fury, and watched the tactical display. Red dots showed Veltar systems. As she watched, another dot turned gray, indicating complete sterilization. Status report, she ordered. Captain Rodriguez looked up from his console. 47 Veltar systems have been cleared. Their military capacity is now at 0%. Colonial evacuation is proceeding ahead of schedule. Any resistance? No, ma'am. After what happened to the Korthak fleet, no one is willing to fight us directly. Admiral Chen nodded. The destruction of 5,000 ships in 30 minutes had sent a clear message to every species in the galaxy. Humanity was not bluffing about their capabilities. What about their allies? 17 species have formally withdrawn their support for the Veltar. The others are sending diplomatic messages asking for terms of surrender. Terms? Chen's voice was ice cold. There are no terms. They supported child murderers. They will evacuate all Veltar territories and provide reparations to human families who lost loved ones. That is not negotiable. But even as humanity's military campaign continued, something else was happening. Something that would change the galaxy forever. Other alien species were learning what humans were really like. On the planet Xerion, Ambassador Kolmar of the Thraxian Republic watched news feeds of the human advance with growing amazement. They could have destroyed the Veltar colonies with all civilians still on them. He said to his aide, their weapons are certainly powerful enough, but they give them time to evacuate. Perhaps they are not as savage as the Veltar claimed, his aide replied. No, Kolmar said thoughtfully. They are more dangerous than the Veltar ever were. But they are not savage. They are something else entirely. The Thraxians had been neutral in the conflict, but they were close enough to Veltar space to observe the human military in action. What they saw challenged everything they thought they knew about warfare. Human ships moved with perfect coordination, like they were controlled by a single mind. They struck only military targets with surgical precision. They gave clear warnings before each attack and honored every evacuation deadline they set. But most importantly, they kept their promises. When the humans said they would destroy a planet, they destroyed it. When they said they would spare civilians, they spared them. When they said they would erase the Veltar military from existence, they meant it literally. Send a message to the human fleet, Ambassador Kolmar ordered. Tell them the Thraxian Republic formally recognizes their right to seek justice for their dead. Similar decisions were being made across the galaxy. Species that had feared the Veltar for centuries were beginning to see the humans as liberators, rather than conquerors. The Zephyrian collective had been enslaved by the Veltar for 200 years. When human ships arrived in their system, the Zephyrians expected to simply change masters. Instead, Admiral Chen broadcast a message to their world. People of Zephyr, you are free. The Veltar forces in your system have been eliminated. You may govern yourselves as you see fit. We ask only that you never again support those who harm innocent people. The Zephyrian leaders could barely believe it. They are just leaving? Asked Prime Minister Velnara. It appears so, replied her aide. They destroyed the Veltar garrison and their orbital platforms, but they are making no demands on us. What kind of conquerors free their enemies' slaves and ask for nothing in return? The answer was simple, the kind that were not conquerors at all. Humanity was not trying to build an empire. They were trying to eliminate a threat and prevent it from ever rising again. By the third week of the campaign, the Veltar Dominion existed only as scattered refugee fleets fleeing toward the edge of the galaxy. Every military installation had been destroyed. Every weapons factory had been turned to dust. Every planet that had served as a base of operations had been sterilized. But Overlord Vexhai was not ready to give up. We still have the deep space installations, he told his remaining advisors. The humans cannot know about all of them. Overlord, his intelligence chief said carefully, they seem to know about installations we had forgotten existed. Yesterday they destroyed a weapons cache that has been hidden for 50 years. How is that possible? What Vexhai did not know was that humanity had been watching the Veltar for decades. Their intelligence networks had infiltrated every level of Veltar society. They knew about secret bases, hidden fleets, and contingency plans that even most Veltar military officers did not know about. Humanity had not just been preparing for war. They had been preparing for this specific war against this specific enemy. The final proof came when human ships appeared simultaneously at every remaining Veltar facility in the galaxy. Bases that had been secret for centuries were destroyed within minutes of each other, as if the humans had perfect knowledge of every Veltar military asset. It is over, Overlord, his aide said quietly. We have nothing left, but Vexhai had one last card to play. Send a message to all Veltar ships, he ordered. Scatter to the far reaches of the galaxy. Hide among other species. Wait for a chance to rebuild. The message went out, but it was intercepted by human intelligence within seconds. Admiral Chen's response was broadcast to every ship in the galaxy. To any Veltar who think they can hide and rebuild, you are mistaken. We know the location of every ship in your fleet. We know the identity of every officer in your military. We know the faces of everyone who participated in the murder of human civilians. She paused, letting that sink in. You have one choice. Surrender yourselves for trial by human courts or be hunted down and eliminated wherever you try to hide. There is no third option. There is no escape. There is no rebuilding. Her face appeared on screens throughout Veltar space, and her blue eyes held no mercy at all. We told you that you would learn what humans do to murderers. You have seen our fleets and our weapons. Now you will see our patience. We will hunt you across the galaxy and through time itself if necessary. Your species chose to make itself our enemy when you killed our families for entertainment. Admiral Chen leaned forward, and her voice became quiet and deadly. Now you will spend the rest of your existence learning what that choice cost you. The transmission ended, but the message was clear. Humanity had not just won a war. They had implemented a doctrine of total elimination that would echo through the galaxy for generations. The Veltar Dominion was gone. Not just defeated, but erased so completely that future historians would struggle to believe it had ever existed. And every species in the galaxy now knew one simple truth. Humans were the most dangerous predators in the universe. And the only thing that had kept them peaceful was that no one had been stupid enough to hurt their families. Until now. 6 months later, the galaxy was a very different place. Where the Veltar Dominion had once ruled 300 systems, there was now empty space dotted with memorial beacons. Each beacon broadcast the same message in 1,000 languages. Here stood those who thought innocent blood was entertainment. Remember their fate. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of Earth's new orbital station, looking out at a line of ships that stretched beyond the horizon. They were not human ships. They were vessels from every corner of the galaxy, all waiting for the same thing: an audience with humanity. "The Andromedan Council is requesting a formal alliance," reported Captain Rodriguez, reading from his datapad. "They offer complete technological sharing and mutual defense agreements. The Rigelian Commonwealth wants to establish trade relations," added Lieutenant Sarah Martinez. "They are offering exclusive access to their zero-point energy research. The Centauri Federation is asking for human military advisors to help them restructure their defense forces," said Commander Jackson. Admiral Chen listened to the reports with a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. They had won the war, but at a cost that would take generations to fully understand. "What is the status of the Veltar survivors?" she asked. 733 individuals remain in human custody," Rodriguez replied. "They are being held on Prison Station Alpha while their trials continue." "And the others?" "As of yesterday, the last known Veltar military officer was captured near the Galactic Rim." "The hunt is officially over," Admiral Chen nodded. It had taken 6 months, but humanity had kept its promise. Every Veltar who had participated in the massacre on New Geneva had been found and brought to justice. Some had surrendered. Others had tried to hide among alien populations. A few had attempted to fight, none had escaped. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Martinez said carefully, "there are some who say we went too far. That completely destroying their civilization was excessive." Admiral Chen turned from the window and looked at the young officer. Martinez had lost her entire family on New Geneva. Her parents, her husband, and her 2 children had all died in the arena while the galaxy watched. "Lieutenant, what do you think?" Martinez was quiet for a long moment. "I think about my daughter Emma asking me why the bad aliens wanted to hurt people. I think about my son Tommy trying to hide behind his grandfather when the weapons started firing. I think about my husband holding them both while they died." Her voice was steady, but tears were running down her face. "And then I think about the fact that no other family will ever have to go through that, because those monsters no longer exist. So no, Admiral, I do not think we went too far." Admiral Chen put a hand on the younger woman's shoulder. The galaxy needed to learn that there are consequences for treating innocent people as entertainment. Now they know. But the real change in the galaxy was not fear of human military power. It was something much more profound. On the former Veltar world of Kethera, now renamed Haven, the First Galactic Council of Free Worlds was meeting. Representatives from over 200 species had gathered to discuss the future. The meeting was being held in a simple building with no guards and no weapons. It did not need them. Everyone there knew that humanity was watching, and humanity had made its position very clear. Species that harmed innocent people would be eliminated. Species that protected innocent people would be protected. The choice was simple. "The human proposal is unprecedented," said Ambassador Velnara of the Free Zephyrian Collective. "They want to establish a galactic court system to prosecute crimes against civilian populations. They also want to create a rapid response force," added Representative Kolmar of the Thraxian Republic. "Any species that commits genocide or mass murder would face immediate intervention." "By human forces?" asked the delegate from Rigel. "By whatever forces are necessary," Kolmar replied. "The humans have made it clear that they will provide military support to any species willing to stand up for the innocent." What the aliens were slowly realizing was that humanity had not just eliminated the Veltar. They had created a new template for galactic civilization. The old system had been based on strength. Powerful species conquered weaker ones. Technology determined status. Military might made right. The new system was based on something else entirely: the protection of innocent life. Species that followed this principle found themselves with access to human technology, human protection, and human trade agreements. Species that violated it found themselves facing the same fate as the Veltar. It was the most effective peacekeeping system the galaxy had ever seen. On Earth, President Elizabeth Warren signed the final document that would reshape human society forever. The Terran Defense Force was being expanded into something new: the Galactic Protection Service. "Are you certain about this?" asked Secretary of Defense Rodriguez. We are essentially volunteering to become the galaxy's police force. We became that the moment we eliminated the Veltar, Warren replied. The only question now is whether we do it officially, or let other species wonder what we might do next. The truth was that humanity had no choice. They had demonstrated power beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Other species would either try to ally with them or try to destroy them. There was no middle ground. By making their intentions clear and their principles non-negotiable, humanity was ensuring that the choice would be alliance. Besides, Warren continued, we have learned something important about ourselves. We are very good at war, but we are much better at peace. Let us use our strength to make sure that what happened on New Geneva never happens again to anyone. The new galactic order was not an empire in the traditional sense. Earth was not collecting tribute or claiming territory. Instead, humanity had become something like the ultimate deterrent against atrocity. Species across the galaxy began to change their behavior. Wars became smaller and more careful. Civilian populations were protected by both sides in conflicts. Slavery was abolished on world after world as leaders realized that humanity was watching. The Galactic Protection Service did not need to intervene often. Usually, the mere threat of human response was enough to prevent atrocities before they started. But when intervention was necessary, it was swift and absolute. The hegemony of Voss made the mistake of enslaving an entire species for gladiatorial combat. Human ships appeared in their space within hours. The Voss leader, Supreme Commander Haktar, tried to negotiate. We have done nothing different than what species have done for millennia, he protested. This is simply how the strong treat the weak. Admiral Chen's response was broadcast to every world in Voss space. That was the old galaxy. This is the new one. You have 12 hours to free every slave and provide them with transport to their homeworlds. You have 24 hours to surrender every individual responsible for enslaving them. Failure to comply will result in the complete destruction of your civilization. The Voss complied. Word of the Voss incident spread quickly. Other species began to police themselves, knowing that humanity was always watching and always ready to act. Years passed. The galaxy settled into its new normal. Children on 1,000 worlds grew up in peace, knowing that there were beings somewhere among the stars who would protect them from monsters. Pirates and slavers found themselves hunted not just by their victims, but by the most advanced military force in the galaxy. Governments that had once ruled through fear now ruled through consent, knowing that oppression would bring swift retribution. Admiral Chen, now in her 70s, stood once again on the observation deck of Earth Station. But this time she was not alone. Her granddaughter Emma, named for the child she had never been able to save, stood beside her. Grandmother, the little girl asked, why do the aliens call us the Guardians? Chen smiled and knelt down to look into eyes that reminded her so much of her lost brother Mike. Because a long time ago, some very bad people hurt our family. We made sure that could never happen again to anyone. Now other families across the galaxy can sleep safely because they know we are watching over them. Will we always have to watch? Admiral Chen looked out at the stars, where human ships patrolled space lanes and human technologies protected worlds beyond counting. As long as there are innocent people who need protection, there will be humans ready to provide it. That is who we are now. That is who we chose to become. The little girl nodded solemnly. And the bad people are all gone? The ones who hurt our family are gone, Chen replied. But there might be others someday. If there are, we will be ready for them too. She stood up and took her granddaughter's hand, looking out at a galaxy that had learned to fear humanity's wrath, but also to trust humanity's protection. The Veltar had wanted to show the galaxy what happened to humans who stepped out of line. Instead, they had shown the galaxy what humans did to anyone who harmed the innocent. The lesson had been learned well. In the depths of space, memorial beacons continued to broadcast their message. Here stood those who thought innocent blood was entertainment. Remember their fate. And across the galaxy, billions of beings did remember. They remembered, and they made sure their children remembered too. The galaxy was at peace, and it would stay that way as long as humanity was watching, forever.